There is a kind of silence that can make a man question everything. Not the peaceful kind, not the kind that helps you rest. I am talking about the silence that waits for you when you unlock the door at night and step into a room where nobody is expecting you. No message lighting up your phone. No soft voice asking how your day went. No one sitting beside you. No one reaching for you. Just your footsteps, your breathing, and the strange weight of being left alone with your own thoughts. And if that becomes your normal for long enough, something starts happening inside you. You stop just feeling alone. You start interpreting your life through that aloneness. You start reading meaning into the silence. You start wondering whether your life is late, whether you are missing something, whether God passed by your door while blessing everybody else. And maybe you do not say it out loud, because men are trained to hide certain kinds of pain. But deep down, the question still sits there. Why am I still here? Why does it feel like everyone else is being chosen, while I keep going home alone? That question is heavier than people realize, because loneliness is never just about the absence of another person. It is about what that absence starts saying to you if you do not answer it with truth. It starts whispering that you are behind, that you are undesirable, that you are less complete than the men who already found someone, that if you were more attractive, more successful, more interesting, more mature, more spiritual, more whatever, then your story would look different by now. Loneliness is dangerous, not only because it hurts. Loneliness is dangerous because it can become a false prophet if you let it speak long enough. And the world gives that false prophet a microphone. The world tells men that to be alone is to be lacking. It tells you that masculinity is proven by being wanted. It tells you that if nobody desires you, then something must be wrong with you. It tells you that a man without a woman is unfinished. That companionship is not a gift but a scoreboard. That being single is something you should be quietly ashamed of, especially if enough time has passed. And once those lies settle into your thinking, you no longer experience singleness as a season. You experience it as an accusation. But God does not speak that way to men. God does not look at a man living alone and immediately call him incomplete. God does not look at a quiet season and assume it is wasted. God does not measure a man by whether someone is currently holding his hand, desiring his attention, or affirming his worth. God looks deeper than that. He looks at the inner structure. He looks at what is being built in hidden places. He looks at what solitude is exposing. He looks at what silence is teaching. He looks at what the man is becoming when there is no applause and no romantic affirmation, helping him feel strong. And that is where this message begins, because some of you are not in a dead season. You are in a building season. It may not feel like that. It may feel empty. It may feel unfair. It may feel unfair while everyone else keeps still, while everyone else keeps. But you need to understand something that many men only realize too late. God often builds a man most deeply in seasons that look least impressive from the outside. Public life is where things are seen. Hidden life is where things are formed. And if God intends to trust a man with real weight later, he will often do deep work in him first while nobody is watching. That is not punishment. That is preparation. Look at the pattern all through Scripture. David was not formed in the palace first. He was formed in the field. Moses was not shaped in front of crowds first. He was shaped in the wilderness. Joseph was not prepared for influence, while everybody admired. He was prepared in isolation, betrayal, false accusation, and waiting. Paul disappeared into hidden years before his voice reached nations. Even Jesus walked through wilderness before public ministry unfolded in its fullness. God is not obsessed with visible momentum. He is committed to substance, and substance is usually formed out of sight. That matters because men often confuse movement with growth. You can be moving and not be growing. You can be dating and not be healing. You can be well, still be deeply unstable. You can be surrounded and still be hollow. You can have access to people and have no foundation. But solitude strips those illusions away. Solitude forces a man to discover whether he actually has roots, whether he actually knows how to stand, whether his faith works without emotional reinforcement, whether he has discipline when no one is there to admire it, whether his mind has been trained, or whether it simply gets carried wherever appetite leads it. That is why silence feels so exposing, because when life gets quiet, the real condition of the soul becomes harder to ignore. Your thought life becomes visible. Your coping mechanisms become visible. The cravings you keep feeding become visible. The places where you still need female attention to feel significant. The places where lust is stronger than discipline become visible. The places where insecurity is hiding underneath your confidence become visible. Silence is not cruel. Silence is revealing. And whatever silence reveals, God wants to transform. But transformation is uncomfortable. That is why so many men run from hidden seasons instead of learning from them. The hidden season does not flatter you. It confronts you. It shows you whether your identity depends too much on being desired. It shows you whether your joy is too dependent on emotional stimulation. It shows you whether your idea of love is actually full of need, fantasy, and self-soothing rather than maturity and covenant. It shows you whether you are ready to love someone or whether you are mostly desperate not to feel alone anymore. That distinction matters more than most men understand. Because many men say they are ready for a relationship when what they really mean is that they are tired of discomfort. They are tired of coming home alone, tired of waiting, tired of being unseen, tired of dealing with their own emptiness, tired of the ache. And so they start imagining that what they need most is not formation, not healing, not discipline, not deeper communion with God, but simply a woman, someone warm, someone present, someone who can make the room feel less quiet and the heart feel less heavy. But a woman was never meant to become your salvation from emptiness. She was never meant to carry the burden of proving your worth every day. She was never meant to become the answer to questions only God can settle in you. She was never meant to heal insecurity you are unwilling to surrender. She was never meant to replace intimacy with God, stabilize your identity, or quiet the parts of your soul that panic when you are not being chosen by someone. If you place that weight on a relationship, you will not love well. You will cling, demand, fear, control, perform, and call it love because your need is louder than your clarity. That is one reason God sometimes keeps a man alone. Not because the desire for marriage is bad, not because companionship is unspiritual, not because God is cold to longing, but because he loves you too much to let you build your future on a false foundation. If a man enters relationships still believing that female attention is what completes him, he will eventually demand from that woman what only God should supply. He will call her his peace when she was only meant to share life, not become the source of it. He will call her his identity when she was only meant to be loved, not worshipped. And over time, that misplaced expectation will turn desire into pressure and intimacy into burden. So sometimes singleness is not deprivation. Sometimes it is detox. Detox from needing constant validation. Detox from fantasy. Detox from fantasy. Detox from comparing your story to everybody else's highlight reel. Detox from lust masquerading as love. Detox from the illusion that you are only truly alive when someone is affirming you romantically. Detox from the idea that your value rises and falls with how desirable you seem in a given season. God may be using the silence to break things off you that would poison love later. And that process, if you surrender to it, is holy. It is holy when a man learns to sit in the ache without bowing to it. It is holy when he stops medicating loneliness with compromise. It is holy when he drags his restless mind back to truth, instead of letting it spiral into self-pity. It is holy when he refuses counterfeit affection because he knows temporary comfort is too expensive if it weakens his spirit. It is holy when he keeps himself clean in private, even though no one would know otherwise. Those are not small things. Those are the quiet victories that shape a man's backbone. Because a man is not built by what he says he wants. He's built by what he does when wanting hurts. And this is where many men are tested, not in public, in private, in the late hours, in the empty apartment, in the scrolling, in the temptation, in the nights when desire feels louder than prayer, in the moments when it would be so easy to compromise a little just to feel something, just to stop feeling invisible, just to convince yourself you are still wanted. The hidden season reveals whether your appetite rules you, or whether the Spirit of God is teaching you dominion over yourself. That is why singleness can become such a powerful training ground. Because if a man learns to govern himself in loneliness, he becomes much stronger than a man who only knows how to function when life feels emotionally full. If he learns how to pray without external encouragement, how to work without applause, how to stay faithful without being admired, how to endure longing without letting longing, then he is becoming stable. He is becoming grounded. He is becoming the kind of man who can carry real responsibility without collapsing the moment life gets heavy. And responsibility is what love will eventually require. This is one of the biggest lies modern culture tells men. It makes relationships look like escape. It makes romance look like relief. It makes marriage look like the place where loneliness ends and life finally begins. But Scripture pushes much deeper than that. Love is not escape. Love is wait. Covenant, sacrifice, restraint, leadership, protection, patience, self-giving, long obedience. A man who sees relationship only. A man who sees relationship, he is seeing through hunger, not through wisdom. That is why it is possible to want something good for the wrong reason. You may want marriage, but mainly because you are tired of confronting yourself. You may want companionship, but mainly because you want relief from inner emptiness. You may want a godly woman, but mainly because you hope her presence will silence your insecurity. And if God gave you that too soon, you might not steward it well. Not because you are evil, because you are unprepared. because your longing outran your formation, because your need for comfort would distort your ability to love with steadiness. God knows that before you do. He knows what kind of woman would strengthen your purpose, and what kind would amplify your weakness. He knows what season you would have settled for the wrong thing just because you were tired of being alone. He knows which door you would have called destiny simply because it opened at the right emotional moment. He knows how vulnerable loneliness can make a man to flattering distractions. And because he knows, his delay is not always rejection. Sometimes it is fierce protection. Some of you have no idea how many wrong relationships God already saved you from. Some of the connections you cried over would have drained your calling. Some of the women you thought you needed would have fed your appetite while starving your spirit. Some of the attention you wanted so badly would have reinforced weakness instead of building wisdom. Some of those almost relationships were not losses. They were rescues, but loneliness can make a man misread rescue as deprivation. It can make him romanticize what would have derailed him if God had said yes too early. That is why waiting requires trust, not just patience. Patience can be passive. Trust is active. Trust says God knows what he is doing, even when the room is quiet. Trust says my life is not on hold just because marriage has not happened yet. Trust says this season has purpose, even if it is painful. Trust says I will not turn longing into an idol. Trust says I will not build theology out of comparison. Trust says, I will not let other people's timelines become the ruler over my peace. Trust says, God is forming me in ways I may not fully understand yet. And trust grows in silence. It grows when prayers seem slow, when the nights are long, when the ache is real, when temptation feels personal. When nobody is affirming what God is doing in your life. When your growth is hidden and your progress is invisible. Those are the places where faith thickens, not because they are pleasant, because they force you to choose what you will believe when you do not get immediate emotional reward for believing it. That is why some hidden seasons become the strongest years of a man's life later, even if they felt miserable while he was living through them. He looks back and realizes that was where his mind got cleaned up. That was where his prayer life became real. That was where he stopped chasing attention and started valuing character. That was where he learned how much of his identity had been attached to being noticed. That was where he discovered discipline. That was where fantasy died and maturity began. That was where his relationship with God stopped being theoretical and became survival. That was where he learned to stand, and standing is a bigger gift than most men realize. Because if you cannot stand alone, you will lean too hard once someone enters your life. You will look to her to stabilize what you never learned to bring under God. You will put pressure on the relationship because you are trying to get from it more than God designed it to give. You will call it deep love, but much of it will just be fear of losing your emotional support. You will panic more quickly, cling more tightly, compromise more easily, and crumble more deeply because your roots were never strengthened in private. This is why solitude is not always your enemy. Sometimes solitude is where God teaches you to carry yourself properly as a man, to take responsibility for your spirit, to stop expecting other people to manage what you refuse to confront, to build routines that make you stronger, to guard your eyes, to govern your body, to clean up your habits, to grow in truth, to let the Word of God become more than decoration, to stop flirting with half obedience, to become dependable before being entrusted with someone else's heart. That last part matters, because every man says he wants the right woman, but not every man is yet asking whether he is becoming the right man to receive her. Not the attractive man, not the charming man, the right man, the kind of man whose inner world is not ruled by appetite, the kind of man who can lead without ego, who can listen without defensiveness, who can sacrifice without self-pity, who can stay clean in secret, who can be patient without resentment, who can love without making a woman responsible for his identity. That man does not usually appear overnight. He is formed slowly, in repeated obedience, in resisted temptation, in hidden consistency, in mornings where he gets up and seeks God while no one is impressed, in evenings where he feels the pull toward compromise and refuses it, in seasons where his emotions are loud but his convictions stay louder, in long stretches where he feels unseen yet keeps building anyway. That is how masculinity gets refined in the kingdom of God. Not by noise, by depth. So if you are in a quiet season, stop asking only what is missing. Start asking what is being built. Maybe God is building discipline where you used to live impulsively. Maybe he is building emotional steadiness where you used to be ruled by mood. Maybe he's building discernment because in a weaker season you would have called lust love. Maybe he is building contentment because your heart still thinks being chosen by a woman is the highest form of confirmation. Maybe he is building patience because your future will require a man who is not frantic. Maybe he is building spiritual authority because you cannot lead others if you have not learned to submit yourself. Maybe he is also healing you, healing wounds you keep under the surface, healing the fear of being unwanted, healing the pain of rejection you never processed properly, healing the quiet shame that formed when you compared your life too often, healing the boy inside you who thinks being chosen romantically is what finally makes him enough, healing memories that still shape how you view women, affection, intimacy, and work. Healing matters because unhealed men often mistake being loved for being rescued. And those are not the same thing. That is why the hidden season can feel both painful and sacred. Painful because it exposes what you would rather ignore. Sacred because exposure in the hands of God becomes invitation. He is not showing you these things to mock you. He is showing you these things because he intends to free you, to make you less reactive, less needy, less fragile, less ruled by external attention, more solid, more clear, more governed by truth, more rooted in him. And roots are what determine what you can carry later. Everybody wants fruit. Almost nobody wants root work. Fruit is visible. Root work is buried. Fruit gets celebrated. Root work gets overlooked. Fruit is easy to admire. Root work feels lonely. But when storms come, but with fruit that keeps a tree, it is the root. And relationships, responsibilities, marriage, fatherhood, leadership, calling, all of those things eventually come with storms. If there are no roots, the man may look impressive for a little while, but he will not hold steady for long. That is why hidden seasons matter so much. A man who lets God build him in silence develops a strength that cannot be faked. He stops being so easily shaken by the opinions of others. He becomes less seduced by flattery, less desperate for validation, less vulnerable to counterfeit intimacy, less controlled by moods, more able to stay with truth, even when feelings run in another direction, more able to love from stability rather than from starvation. That kind of man is rare because most men never stay in the hidden work long enough for it to mature. They rush, they numb, they compare, they distract themselves. They settle for shallow comfort instead of deeper formation. Do not do that. Do not waste your lonely season by only trying to escape it. Let it teach you things noise never could. Let it expose your false dependencies. Let it reveal the places where you still need too much from human attention. Let it show you how much of your confidence is borrowed instead of built. Let it train you to live before God in truth. Let it turn your nights into altars instead of spiral chambers. Let it make you cleaner, clearer, sharper, stronger. Because one day, when the season changes, you will need what silence built. You will need the discipline it taught you. You will need the discernment it trained in you. You will need the self-control it forced you to practice. You will need the emotional maturity it started shaping. You will need the freedom from validation addiction it began carving out. You will need the habit of going to God first instead of to comfort first. You will need the strength to love someone without demanding that they complete what only God could complete in you. That is what preparation looks like. It is not glamorous. It often does not feel romantic. It rarely gets celebrated while it is happening, but it is real. And if you surrender to it, it will make you far more ready for what is ahead than constant emotional relief ever could. There is also something else you need to hear. Being single does not mean you are unwanted. That lie has wounded many men, because it sounds so believable when life is quiet. But God's view of worth was never based on your relationship status. You were not known more fully by heaven the moment someone desired you. You were not made more valuable the moment a woman noticed you. You were not invisible to God before that point. Your value began in His intention, not in somebody else's attention. And until that settles deep in a man, he will keep chasing human confirmation like it is oxygen. You do not need that chase. You need truth. You need grounding. You need the kind of identity that still stands when nobody texts back. The kind of peace that still breathes when the room is empty. The kind of confidence that does not collapse because your story is slower than someone else's. The kind of masculinity that is not built on being admired, but on being anchored. That is what God is after in you. So stop calling yourself behind. Behind whom? Behind what? Behind the timeline culture sold you? Behind the illusion that every visible relationship is healthy and every single life is lacking. Behind the people whose public companionship hides private chaos. Do not let appearances disciple you. God writes stories in different rhythms, and some of His strongest men walked through long hidden seasons before anything outwardly impressive unfolded. The hidden years were not dead years. They were foundation years. Maybe that is what these are for you. Foundation years, years where God is teaching you how to be alone without becoming bitter, how to desire marriage without worshiping it, how to carry longing without letting longing lead, how to suffer a little without running to sin for relief, how to stay open-hearted before God while the world keeps trying to make you cynical, how to keep building when the results are not yet visible, how to become the kind of man whose future family will thank God for these quiet years, even if you do not understand them yet. Because that is another truth hidden inside this whole subject. Your lonely season is not only about you. It may also be about the people your future will touch. The wife you may one day love. The children you may one day raise. The people you may one day lead. The men you may one day strengthen. The home you may one day shape. If God is Doing, doing. If God is doing, do it. Do. It is to make your future sturdier. What you let him build in private can become shelter for other people later. But if you refuse the work now, someone else may have to live with the weakness you never faced. That should sober you, because a man who refuses formation does not only harm himself, he eventually leaks that instability into relationships, marriage, family, leadership, and legacy. But a man who lets God deal with him deeply becomes different. He brings peace instead of chaos, clarity instead of confusion, safety instead of volatility, strength instead of appetite-driven leadership. That does not happen by accident. It is grown, often in quiet. So if tonight you are again sitting in the silence, do not assume nothing holy is happening. Maybe heaven is doing root work. Maybe God is clearing out false ideas of manhood that were never worthy of you. Maybe he is teaching you to find him where you used to only feel lack. Maybe he is showing you that your loneliness can become a place of encounter instead of only a place of complaint. Maybe he's rewriting what you think it means to be a strong man. Not loud, not constantly desired, not always surrounded, but disciplined, present, steady, clear, unshaken at the core, because his life is built on God. That kind of man can endure waiting without rotting inside it. He can keep longing without becoming entitled. He can keep trusting without building resentment toward heaven. He can keep moving without acting like his life has not started yet. He can guard his purity because he values more than immediate comfort. He can tell the truth about what hurts without letting the hurt define him. He can be gentle without being weak. He can be patient without becoming passive. He can be alone without becoming empty. That is not natural strength. That is formed strength. And formed strength, and formed strength, and formed strength is worth the process. So no, the silence is not easy. The unanswered desire. Sometimes the holiest seasons feel the hardest while you are living in them. You only understand their power later, when the structure they built begins carrying weight you never could have handled before. One day you may look back at this lonely stretch and realize that it saved you from becoming a shallow man with quick comfort and no roots. You may realize it taught you how to pray, how to endure, how to govern yourself, how to hear God without noise, how to live without needing constant emotional fuel, how to want love without bowing to it, how to value calling more than momentary relief, how to become dangerous in the kingdom because your life learned how to stand in hidden places. That is what God can do with silence. He can turn it into structure. He can turn it into firewood for discipline. He can turn it into a room where your identity gets rebuilt. He can turn it into an altar where false dependencies die. He can turn it into a classroom where you learn self-control. He can turn it into preparation for a relationship that will need much more than your feelings. He can turn it into holy training, but you have to stop wasting all your energy trying to prove to yourself that your life is behind. Your life is not behind if God is building depth. Your life is not behind if character is forming. Your life is not behind if your secret life is becoming cleaner. Your life is not behind if patience is growing. Your life is not behind if your need for validation is weakening. Your life is not behind if you are learning how to stay faithful when nobody sees. That is not delay in God's eyes. That is progress of the deepest kind. So guard this season well. Guard your eyes from things that train discontent. Guard your mind from comparisons that poison peace. Guard your habits from shortcuts that promise relief while weakening your soul. Guard your private life, because the man you are becoming there is the man you will become everywhere else. Guard your heart from bitterness. Guard your longing from idolatry. Guard your theology from becoming shaped by loneliness instead of by truth. And above all, keep walking with God in the silence. Not just visiting him when the ache becomes unbearable. Walking with him, let him meet you in the ordinary evenings. Let him search you. Let him correct you. Let him comfort you. Let him expose what still needs to die. Let him build what future stewardship will require. Let him become more real to you than the voice that says your life has not begun, because no woman is there yet. Because if God is with you, your life has already begun. It is happening now, in the quiet, in the discipline, in the resisted temptation, in the nights where you choose prayer over compromise, in the mornings where you choose purpose over self-pity, in the places where you keep showing up even when you feel unseen. In the private decisions only heaven records, that is where a man gets built. And when a man gets built by God, silence is no longer merely empty. It becomes the sound of foundations being laid. So if you are a man living alone without a girlfriend, hear me clearly. You are not automatically forgotten. You are not automatically disqualified. You are not automatically behind. You are not automatically less. You may be in one of the most important seasons of your life. A season where God is stripping away childish dependence, exposing false cravings, deepening your roots, strengthening your roots, refining your identity, and preparing you for weight your present self could not yet carry wisely. Do not despise that. Do not trade that for fast comfort. Do not throw that away because the room feels quiet. Do not misread the silence as abandonment when it may be formation. Do not let loneliness bully you into believing lies that heaven never spoke. Let the season do its work. Let it make you stronger, cleaner, steadier, more grounded, more dangerous to darkness, because you no longer need constant affirmation to know who you are. And if the waiting still hurts, tell the truth about it to God. Do not pretend you feel nothing. Bring him the ache. Bring him the temptation. Bring him the disappointment. Bring him the nights that feel longer than they should. Bring him the fear that maybe your story is being skipped. Bring him the comparison. Bring him the weariness. Bring him the whole thing. God does not need your performance. He wants your honesty. Honest men can be formed. Performing men usually stay shallow. Let this season become honest. Let it become holy. Let it become more than an empty hallway in your life. Let it become the place where God made you into a man who could stand alone without being hollow, wait without becoming bitter, desire without becoming ruled, and love without demanding to be saved by it. Because that man is worth becoming, and if God is building you in silence, then silence is not your enemy. It is the workshop. It is the training ground. It is the hidden place where the future gets its foundation. It is where God makes men deep enough to carry what they keep asking him for. So stay with him there. Stay clean there. Stay honest there. Stay full there, because one day, when the season opens and the next chapter begins, you will not want to walk into it as a man who merely survived being alone. You will want to walk into it as a man whom silence made strong.